So what's going on guys, Kids here, and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 5 meta builds that the top 5 players on the leaderboards use in Albion Online. So for each and every single build I will show you what abilities and armor you want to get. Then I will explain every single skill and what is the best skill rotation that you want to use for both PvP and PvE. And then lastly I will show you the best gameplay, so you would be able to get the best results and highest damage possible and much more. So no matter how much silver you have or how high or low your weapon levels are, you can easily use these builds and follow the step-by-step guide. If this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the first and the best meta build, which is the carving sword. So for the weapon of choice, we of course go with the carving sword and pick the first Q, third W and last passive. Then for the helmet, get the helmet of valor and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for chest armor, get the Mistwalker's jacket and choose the third ability and first passive. Then for boots, get the boots of valor and pick the second ability and second passive. Then for the cape, get the undead cape. And then lastly for consumables, use the major healing potions and Avalonian beef stew. Then now let's move over to the skills, and your Q is a basic dash that will closely jump to the enemy and deal damage. Each time you use your Q you will get 1 stack, and it can stack up to 4 times. Then your W skill will shoot this blue line that deals damage and roots all of your enemies for a few seconds. Then your E will dash towards the enemy position while dealing damage to all the enemies that you just dashed through. And here comes the stacks. So the more stacks you have when you use your E, the more resistance is reduced when you dash through the enemy. Then our R skill will turn our character into this cloud, and while it's active, we can't take any damage. Then our D skill will create this magic smoke that in 4-meter radius will cleanse ourselves from the enemy debuffs, and if the enemy gets hit by it as well, then all of his buffs will be removed. And then finally our F skill is a simple sprint ability that increases our speed by 80% while receiving healing for a couple of seconds. Then our healing potion we use when we get low HP. As for food, we use it before the fight. And then finally we have the cape, which will automatically activate itself and turn us invisible if we ever drop below 50% HP. So then with all of this said, now let's take a look at the gameplay. So our rotation is very simple. We can usually start the fight with a Q if the enemy is in melee fighter, or we use W if he is ranged. And then from here we keep on using auto attacks and Qs until we get to 4 stacks. Then when we are at full stacks, then we want to use the E ability and rinse and repeat. Of course if the enemy runs away, then we use our W or again the E, but of course that will depend on the situation. And then again for our last 3 skills, we use them depending on the fight. So we mainly activate the R when the enemy is about to deal a lot of damage, then we use D to purge him or cleanse ourselves, and finally we can use F to run away or catch the enemy. And as I said previously, when we start dropping below 50% HP, then we can pop the healing potion, and that's about it. Overall this is a very strong build that is simple to use, and it dominates right now all of the PvP content, so try it out for yourself. So then for the second build we have the Bloodletter, and of course for the weapon of choice we pick the Bloodletter and select the second Q, second W and first passive. Then for our offhand we get the torch. Then for the helmet we get the mercenary hood and choose the third ability and third passive. Then for chest armor we get the stalker's jacket and choose the third ability and third passive. Then for boots we get the sandals of purity and select the second ability and second passive. Then for the cape, go with the Avalonian cape, and for consumables, use the major healing potions and cabbage soup. Then now let's move over to the skills, and your Q is a basic damage skill that will do damage and leap towards the targeted position. Each time you hit an enemy with this, you will receive 1 stack. Each stack will increase our damage by 6%, and it can stack up to 4 times. Then our W is a basic dash that will dash towards the enemy and increase our damage by 15%. We usually use the skill to escape or catch the enemies. Then our E skill is the same dash, just this time this dash will do damage. And if the enemy is below 40% HP, then it will do even more damage. This weapon as well is known as the one-shot killer. And if the enemy is low health, you can a lot of times just one-shot him. Then our R skill will create this big electric field that all enemies standing in it will be taking damage every 0.5 seconds. Then our D skill will release this wave that deals damage, slows enemies or interrupts their spells. Then our F skill is a simple sprint ability that increases our speed by 80% while restoring our energy. Then as for consumables, the healing potion will of course restore our HP. Then the cabbage soup, if we are out of combat, we can quickly use it and we will receive restored energy and HP by 300%. And finally our cape every 30 seconds, when we use one auto attack, it will unleash a magic explosion that will do a lot of damage in 6-meter range. And this will of course happen automatically. So then as far as the gameplay goes, usually we will be catching or escaping from enemies with this build, so we mainly use Q, W and E for mobility, so to catch or escape. Then when we want to do damage, then we keep using auto attacks, we can even pop the R ability. And then when the enemy gets below 40% HP, then we use the E skill. And then again from here, we can keep rotating between these skills, and use the D to catch enemies and F restore energy or keep increasing our mobility. So overall, as you can see, this is the highest mobility build in the game, which you can use to catch anyone or run away from them, as you don't need to worry about stacks, so you can just use all of these skills in no particular order, which would be usually depending on a fight. So if you want the coolest mobility build, then here you go. So then moving over to the third build, which is the Primal Staff. So for the weapon of choice, we of course go with the Primal Staff and pick the 4th Q, 1st W and 3rd passive. Then for the helmet, we get the Soldier's Helmet and choose the 3rd ability and 1st passive. Then for chest armor, get the Cultist Robe and select the 3rd ability and 1st passive. Then for shoes, get the Guardian Boots and select the 2nd ability and 2nd passive. Then as for our choice of capes, we get the Mardlock Cape, and for consumables, use the Major Healing Potions and Roasted Pure Mist Snapper. So now let's take a look at the skills, and our Q will cast this Shockwave that deals damage and gives us 1 stack. Then our W will create this circle that deals damage in this AoE and gives us more stacks. So we want to use our Q and W until we get a full 5 stacks. And then comes the E skill, so it will transform us into a bear, and this will increase our defensives and energy restoration, plus gives us a bunch of other buffs and 2 new unique skills. So our new Q skill will now smash the ground that deals damage and stuns all enemies for 2 seconds. And then our new W skill now will have 2 skills in one combo. So the first time we press W, it will dash to the enemy, knocking them back and dealing damage. And then in the next few seconds, if we press the W skill again, then this time it will unleash a roar that does triple the damage and makes the enemy flee for 1.2 seconds. And the reason why we want to enter the bear form with 5 stacks is because each time we use the new skills, it will consume 1 stack. So the basic gameplay loop is usually to just use Q and W to get to 5 stacks, then switch to the bear form, do a bunch of damage till you are at 0 stacks, and then rinse and repeat. And then finally for our R skill, it will restore our health and energy, while our resistance is increased. Then the D skill is a simple block, which when we activate it, we will become immune to any damage for few seconds. Then our F skill is just a simple sprint, which will increase our speed by 80%, while restoring our health every second. And then finally we have the cape, which will automatically activate when our health drops below 25%, and it will give us a shield increasing our defensives by 50%. So as I said, for the rotation, again it's up to you. Mainly I just recommend to use the first Q and W for getting to 5 stacks, then switch to the bear, use the new Q and W until you are out of stacks, and then again repeat the same steps. And then from here for defensives use the R and D, and to catch or run away use the F skill, and that's it. So if you're looking for another meta build which is more complicated but a lot more fun with the ability to turn into an animal, then this is the one for you. So then for one of the last builds we have the Chillhowl. So for the weapon we pick the Frost Staff Chillhowl and go with the first Q, 3rd W and 1st passive. Then for the offhand we get the Mist Collar. Then for the helmet get the Hunter's Hood and choose the 3rd ability and 3rd passive. Then for armor get again the Cultist Robe and choose the 3rd ability and 1st passive. Then for boots get the Soldier Boots and choose the 2nd ability and 2nd passive. Then for the cape, get the undead cape, and for consumables, use the major healing potion and Avalonian pork omelet. So then as far as our skills go, our Q will shoot this projectile that deals magic damage, and each time it lands, it will give us 1 stack, every stack increasing Alpha damage by 4%, and it can stack up to 3 times. Then our W is a teleport, but which not only teleports our character, but as well stuns the enemies, deals a bit of damage and gives us immunity for 0.2 seconds. So if you have really good reaction time, we can use this teleport skill in many different ways. Then our E skill will create this ice circle that slows the enemies and freezes whoever you target. You can even freeze yourself, and then after the freeze ends, it will explode and do damage if the enemy is near enough. So again, we can use the spell to target the enemy and freeze him, plus explode him and do damage, or we can target ourselves, which will freeze us, thus giving ourselves immunity, and when we come out of the freeze and the enemy is close, he will get damaged by the explosion. So then the R skill will restore our health and energy, while our resistance is increased. Then the D skill is a reflect, which when we activate it, and if someone hits us, most of their damage will be returned back to them, aka reflected. Then our F skill is just a simple sprint, which will increase our speed by 80%, while restoring our health every second. And then finally, for our cape we have the undead cape, that will automatically activate, which when our health drops below 50% will turn us invisible, and we can still use Alpha spells for the next 6 seconds. So then as far as rotations go, again we don't have to worry about no stacks or anything like that, just spam the Q 24/7 while using the W and E for offensive or defensive play. So remember all of the tricks and advantages of what I explained previously. And then depending on the fight, when our HP starts to drop, we can use R or healing potion. Then the D skill we can activate when the enemy has started to deal a bunch of serious damage. And finally we can pop the F skill to get away or towards the enemy. So overall this is a very cool ranged build, which again is super simple to play, but it still has some few tricks. So if you are a good player, you can really outplay the enemy with how you use your W and E. And then finally, for the last and final build, we have the Deadblade. So for the weapon, we want to go with the Deathgivers and pick the second Q, 4W and first passive. Then for the helmet, get the Stalker's Hood and choose the third ability and third passive. Then for chest armor, get the Mistwalker's Jacket and select the third ability and first passive. Then for boots, get the Face Scale Sandals and choose the second ability and second passive. Then for cape, get the Undead Cape, and for consumables, get the Major Healing Potions and Cabbage Soup. Then as far as skills go, our Q is a simple dash that deals damage and applies 1 stack. Then our W will throw a knife that if it lands, it will stun the enemy and pull us behind him, which gives us amazing catching skill, and we can become immune to crowd control or debuffs. Then our E skill will charge through the enemy, dealing massive damage and turning us invisible for 1 second. But if we use the skill while having 3 stacks, then this ability will not go on cooldown, and we will be able to use it again without waiting. Then the R skill will turn us into a cloud that makes us invisible and grants us immunity to any enemy effects. Then the D skill will release this red pulse that in 6 meter range increases our damage by 15% while revealing invisible enemies and reducing their damage resistance. Then our F skill is a simple sprint ability which will increase our movement speed by 80% while restoring our energy. And then finally our Undead Cape will turn us automatically invisible if we ever drop below 50% HP. So then as far as rotations go, at the beginning of the fight we want to use our Q 3 times to get to 3 stacks, and then we either way use W to catch the enemy, and then right away E, or if the enemy is not running away then just use E right away. Then at this point the enemy should start running if he isn't already, so then we use the W and then D plus E for the second time. So as this is a bit more complicated, let me explain. We want to use Q 3 times to get to 3 stacks. So then when we use E, because we have 3 stacks, we get to use it again, and this time before we use E for the second time, we just activate D and then only E, and this will increase our damage and reveal enemies. For the second E, we want to drop the D first, because usually at this point the enemies Undead Cape should proc, or their basic invis skills. So for our finishing shot we drop D plus E to basically finish off the enemy and don't give him a chance to escape. And then lastly, of course, we want to use the R as defensive to proc ourselves for the enemy incoming damage. And then we can pop F to again escape or catch the player. And that's about it. So if you're looking for a stealthy and a badass one-shot build that can literally make you come out of shadows and one-shot an unexpected player, then this is the build for you, so enjoy! So with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good Albion online builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and not miss any more amazing content. With all of this said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in my next video, so take it easy, peace.